Hello everybody, I'm Grant Love from Fletcher Sports Zone and welcome back to another YouTube video. Kind of like what I did last week when I reviewed every NFL team's quarterback history and put it on a tier list of F through D tier. I'm going to do the same thing with NHL goaltending history for each of the NHL franchises here. 31 teams are here. I do not see the Kraken, but that's okay. I probably get the Kraken to D tier anyway, because simply they played 1 year. They've had Chris Drieger. He's not playing well. Philip Grubauer, he's not playing well either. You get the idea. They would be in D tier. Just want to point that out as the Kraken are not on here. Okay, so in the meantime, let's do the rest of the 31 teams. We're just going to go in alphabetical order here, and we'll begin with the Anaheim Ducks, a very generous B. They had Hubert way in the late 90s, early 2000s. He was pretty solid, but things really picked up when they got J.S. Shiger. He is, of course, the Stanley Cup champion goalie with the Ducks. Then they went to Jonas Hiller, who was pretty good, Frederick Anderson for a couple of years, and now John Gibson. They've also had solid backup goaltending, whether that's Ryan Miller, Victor Fost. They've had some solid backup goaltending as well over the years. I give the Ducks a B tier. Coyotes D. Because I'm not including their time at Winnipeg. I'm including that with the Jets. I don't really know a lot of old-time Jets goalies anyways. But for the Coyotes alone, I mean, they had Nikolai Habibulin at the start. He left in, 2001, 2002. They really didn't have a great goalie for a long time. Then they had Ilya Brizgelov, who was mediocre. Then they had Mike Smith, who was mediocre. And I don't know, kind of since Mike Smith left, they just constantly had a revolving door. I mean, they had Antti Ranta. I mean, look what happened to him. He quickly became better since leaving Arizona. Kind of same thing with Mike Smith. Kind of same thing with a lot of backup goalies in Arizona. Now they got two young goaltenders, which I don't really know how good they're going to do. Bruins, borderline S tier. I really want to go S tier, of course, as a Bruin fan myself. I think you could put him in S tier, honestly. Tuukka Rask just retired this season. He leads the franchise in regular season wins. This team before Tuukka Rask, or I guess even during the beginning of the Rask era, had Tim Thomas, who was the starting goalie for the 2011 team. They had John Casey in the mid to late 90s. Same thing with Andy Moog. They had Jerry Cheevers way back when. Pete Peters in the 80s. The Bruins have just constantly had consistent goaltending. I guess there was that little stretch where they had Andrew Raycroft and, that stretch where they didn't really have a great goalie, but still S tier. Sabres, A tier. They've had Dominic Hasek, who is top 3 all time, I think, behind Patrick Waugh and Martin Brodeur. He certainly carries, but Ryan Miller also carries. Same with Tom Barrasso. Those 3 individuals are primarily the reason why Buffalo is so high. Because they just haven't had great goalies since Ryan Miller's left. And I'm being dead honest with you. Last year, they rolled out 41-year-old Craig Anderson, Dustin Tokarski. Before that, it was guys like Jonas Enroth and, my goodness, who was the other guy who constantly gave up games? Never mind. I'm not thinking who I'm thinking of. But anyway, Sabres have just had atrocious goaltending for the past decade for the most part. That's why I can't put them in S tier. Despite their goalies before that were pretty good. This is why guys like Patrick Lalime and I think, I don't think they had Ray Emery, but they had okay goalies in the early 2000s before Ryan Miller. But neither here nor there. I'll probably put them in an A. B would go to the Flames, B tier. Mika Kiprasov, really good. Mike Vernon, really good. Other than that, I don't know. They haven't had a lot of fantastic goalies. They haven't had a lot of bad goalies this year. It was really nice to see the Flames do well with Jacob Markstrom the past couple of years. He's definitely revived his career. He has for the past few years, which is awesome. But at the same time, Calgary it's just that they've had a lot of goalies for a long periods of time, and they've all been decent. Calgary did have that kind of they had that little phase where, yeah, they didn't have a great goalie in the early 2010s, kind of after Kiprusoff retired. Kind of switched that around 2016, 2017, and they just had steady goaltending since. Carolina, again, B tier. I mean, I guess I could even include the Whalers, but Cam Ward primarily pushes them out of C tier. Martin Gerber was all right. Kevin Weeks was all right. Their goalies now, and Frederick Anderson and that young Russian goaltender and Antti Ranta, they're all pretty good. They're not fantastic, but they're certainly worth mentioning. I would probably say B tier for Carolina. I mean, this team had Justin Pogge, Justin Peters. I mean, this team has had a lot of bad goalies over the past decade as well. But I'd say Carolina for C tier. Blackhawks, A tier. The great Tony Esposito passed away over the summer. Prayers to him and his family. But he was a fantastic goalie in the 60s and 70s. Corey Crawford definitely, I think, did enough to become a Hall of Fame goaltender. Antti Niemi won the Stanley Cup with the Blackhawks in 2010. He was great. Eddie Belfour in the 90s was fantastic as well. Yeah, no reason to not put the Blackhawks probably any higher than A. I think S would probably be pushing it, but I would say A tier for sure. Avalanche, man, this is tough between A and B tier. I'm gonna ruffle some feathers and put them in B. Patrick Waugh was fantastic, and I get that. But really, the Nordiques never really had like a fantastic goalie. They've had a lot of solid goalies like Ron Tugnut and whatnot, but they were never like leading the league in like shutouts, save percentage, all that stuff. Patrick Waugh was great. And then they kind of didn't have a goalie for a while. I felt they were just constantly flipping through guys like Peter Budaj, Alex Auld, who's the other guy. I'm looking on the other guy. Then they had Semyon Varlamov for a while, who was pretty good. Then they transferred to Calvin Pickard. He was a failed prospect. But that got him Pavel Francouz, and now at the time filming this video, the Avalanche are 1 win away from the Stanley Cup Finals. So, and they also revived Philip Grubauer's career, so we can get a nice contract with the Kraken. So, hey, I'll put the Avalanche in B tier. Blue Jackets, probably D. I mean, that's because they've only been a team since 2000. But yeah, Sergei Bobrovsky and Steve Mason, basically, and I guess Jonas Korpisalo and Elvis Merzlinskins, you can include them as well. Probably better than what Arizona's had, to be fair, but it's more because they're a young team. I think you give them another 10, 15 years, see how Korpisalo or Merzlinskin's career emerges. I think I could probably put them in C, maybe B tier by the time both of them retire. And the Dallas Stars are next. I think that is a C tier. Maybe B. I'm kind of being harsh. I'll put them in C, though. They had Ben Bishop for a little bit, but injuries forced him to retire. Antoine Khudobin had that amazing 2020 run, but he hasn't really done much else than that. They had Marty Turco for a long time in the early 2000s. He was very good. Eddie Belfour won a cup with the team in 99. He was their starting goaltender. The North Stars had John Casey and a couple other decent goalies. But, yeah, I'd probably say Stars for the most part C. Kari Lehtinen, they had him for a while as well after the Turco era. He was decent, but not terrible, but not great. Red Wings, S tier. Terry Sawchuk is probably one of the best goalies of all time before like the 1980s. They had Chris Osgood, which please hockey gods put him in the Hall of Fame one day. Absolute disgrace that Chris Osgood is not in the Hall of Fame yet. They had Dominic Hasek backing up Chris Osgood when they won the Cup in 2008. Jimmy Howard was solid for a long time. I just feel like they constantly had like great goaltenders. I think there was that stretch in the late 80s where they didn't really have anybody, but then they drafted Osgood, I think it was in 92, and then off they went. Oilers, A tier. Grant Fuhr and Bill Ranford, primarily the reasons why they're so high here, because both those goalies were absolutely tremendous, especially Grant Fuhr. Bill Ranford, very solid as well. Then yeah, they had goalie trouble for a long time. I remember the Oilers. They couldn't develop goalies. That was their main issue. They had Ben Scrivens. He was supposed to be good. They couldn't develop him. They had Devin Dubnyk. They couldn't develop him after he left Edmonton. But still, very solid goaltending history overall wise, especially with the cup winning years. So I won't really put their recent goaltending against them. I mean, they have Mike Smith now. He's not really that great, especially starting in the playoffs for Edmonton. He has been terrible. I mean, they made the Western Conference Finals, but that's not solely because of him. That's because Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are just going insane. Florida Panthers, they are so close to D tier, but I'll put them in C. Wow, I'll tell you one thing, man. Roberto Luongo saved Florida from probably being the worst goaltending list. They had John Van Viesbrusick in the late 90s. He did fine, I guess, but I would still probably put him in D tier. It's Roberto Luongo that solely places the Panthers here. And I guess the future is Spencer Knight. I think Spencer Knight's going to be a fantastic goalie for the Panthers in the future as well. Sergei Bobrovsky's done nothing but underachieve since getting that contract. But I do think Spencer Knight will be pretty good. Yeah, no, Panthers, they had some terrible goaltending. From Luongo's first stint to Luongo's second stint, just the entire in-between, they just had some terrible goalies. I mean, they had Thomas Vokoun. He wasn't awful, but oh my god, after Thomas Vokoun, terrible. Kings, A tier. Jonathan Quick is definitely a good reason why they're ranked so high. I guess they've always kind of had consistent goaltending. They had Rudy in the early 90s. He was solid. But yeah, primarily Jonathan Quick carries there, and Cal Peterson looking pretty good for the future. Wild are C tier. Nicholas Backstrom's been fine. Devin Dubnyk was fine. Josh Harding was all right. Cam Talbot was all right for Minnesota as well. Yeah. I don't know. They're another young team. I can't really rank them too high. Again, founded in 2000. The Canadians, S tier, of course. Ken Dryden, Jacques Plonk, Carey Price now, of course, Patrick Waugh. A lot of Hall of Fame or future Hall of Fame goaltenders played for the Canadians. Jose Theodore in 2003, one of the biggest one-hit wonders. But yeah, no, Montreal just obviously had consistently fantastic goalie. I mean, that's what's going to happen when you've been a team for 103 years. You're going to have a lot of iconic players, and Canadians definitely check off that in the goalie department, as they do in every position in their franchise history. Predators, B. I was going to be cruel and give it a C, but Pekka Rinne was there for way too long to really discredit him and put him in C tier. They were another team that had Thomas Vokoun for a little bit. He didn't really do much, but Jussi Saros is now the goalie replacing Rinne, and he's done very well his first few years in the league. Yeah, give me Nashville in B tier. New Jersey, B tier. Martin Brodeur, I mean, he literally is, in my opinion, the greatest goalie of all time. And he also is literally the only reason why the Devils aren't probably in D tier. The Devils have had horrific goaltending other than their whole, almost 20-year stretch with Martin Brodeur. This terrible goaltending, New Jersey, man. Like, they have, fine goalies now. Like, Mackenzie Blackwood's solid. He's shown flashes, but I don't really know how good of a goalie he is long-term. New Jersey in recent history, I mean, they had the whole Corey Schneider incident where he went from a playoff goalie to a goalie who was starting games in the AHL in under a year. This team had Sean Burke in the late 80s, where he was fine, but wasn't necessarily fantastic. This team had 43-year-old Johan Hedberg. I don't know how good New Jersey really is in goaltending history besides Brodeur. They're pretty mediocre. Islanders A tier. Billy Smith, fantastic goalie in the late 70s, early 80s, won the 4 cups with the Islanders. Like I mentioned with the Kings, Rudy, one of the most underrated goalies from the late 80s, early 90s. Yes, this team has had goalies like Ricky DiPietro and whatnot, but I think the good definitely overcomes the bad when talking about Islander goaltenders. I mean, right now, Ilya Sorokin is really good. He's looking really solid. So I will give the Islanders an A tier. Rangers is S tier. Mike Richter, again, just like Chris Osgood, absolute disgrace to the hockey world how he is not in the Hall of Fame. I don't know what to tell you. He should be the next goalie in the Hall of Fame probably, but too bad he's still going to have to wait his turn. That kind of sucks. Henrik Lundqvist, he retired last year, but again, just like Richter, it would be an absolute embarrassment for hockey to not have Henrik Lundqvist in the Hall of Fame. It'd be worse if Lundqvist wasn't in the Hall of Fame than Richter, to put it to you that way. Of course, y'all probably remember watching Henrik Lundqvist. Man, I just remember him in the 2013 playoffs, 2014 playoffs, 2012 regular season. He was like the most dominant goalie in 2012. He was just constantly good. Unfortunately, we never saw him in a Capitals uniform, Lundqvist, because he had to retire due to that heart issue. But, I mean, man, he was the definition of New York. Center of attention, Lundqvist, always top of the league in shutouts, and especially save percentage. I can't list all of Henrik Lundqvist's accomplishments. Made way too many All-Star games to count. He was incredible. Ottawa Senators, jeez. They've had like Craig Anderson and Ray Emery in their prime and Robin Lehner. Like, that's okay goalies, but I'm going to be a little harsh and give them C tier. Flyers, B. Like what? Oh, I mean, how do I explain this nicely to you Flyers fans? Carter Hart is really good. I just don't know why he's been so terrible. Probably because of his god-awful defense, but listen, Carter Hart has the potential to be really good. Don't quit on him yet, Philadelphia. I mean, he's better than Steve Mason, Ilya Brizgalov, Brian Elliott, whoever else you had in front of him. Ron Hextall, great goalie from the 70s, or I guess 80s as well. Another team that had Pete Peters. This was another team that had... I feel like the Flyers have had other goaltenders. They had Marty Biron, who was solid for a few years. Michael Layton was all right for a few years. Yeah, I'd probably say B tier is proper for the Flyers. The Penguins are an S tier. Marc-Andre Fleury, Tommy Barrasso, Matt Murray won 2 Stanley Cups. So this is pretty-terrible Matt Murray. Casey DeSmith and Tristan Jarry look like very good goalies for the future. I'd say Pittsburgh probably have S tier in goaltending all time. Yeah, I did think they're another team that kind of had that stretch in the late 90s, early 2000s where they didn't really have a great goalie, but then they drafted Marc-Andre Fleury first overall in 2003 and changed that. Sharks will be B tier. Martin Jones, surprisingly enough, is the only goalie to lead them to a Stanley Cup final, but he did in 2016. Evgeny Nabokov was fantastic, followed up by Antti Niemi, who was fantastic. We're talking pre-Canadians and Panthers Niemi, and Stars, so he's a very good goalie with the Sharks. And yeah, those are primarily the big three. I mean, the Sharks have also had guys like James Reimer, Alex Stalock, decent backups, but starter-wise, B tier. Blues, same deal. I can't really tell you much history about the Blues goaltending back in like the 80s and 90s and whatnot, other than I know they had Grant Fuhr and John Casey for a little bit, but Jordan Binnington won them the Stanley Cup. Vinny Husso's looking like a very solid goalie for the future. Brian Elliott and Yaroslav Halak, that was a great 1-2 punch in the early 2010s. Tyler Conklin was a solid goaltender as well. Yeah. I'd say Blues would be in B tier. Lightning, borderline S. I got to put them in A just because they're a little bit too young of a team. They were founded in 93. So, I think I'd be pushing it if I was to put them in S, but honestly, man, it wouldn't be much of a surprise if I was to. I mean, you go from Nikolai Happy-Bulin, Dwayne Rollison, to Ben Bishop, to Andrei Vasilevsky. That is incredible 1, 2, 3, 4 punch right there. Vasilevsky, who's played the least out of the bunch, has been the most successful out of the bunch. At the end of the day, Vasilevsky is already a top 15 NHL goaltender of all time. And I know that sounds so crazy to think about it now, but really he is. And by the time he retires, there's a chance he's in top 3 territory. I mean, especially if Tampa Bay comes back, beats the Rangers, and they make their 3rd straight Stanley Cup final in a row. I mean, oh my God. Lightning could very well be S tier. Maybe I will put the Lightning in S tier if Vasilevsky wins one more cup. I'm being wicked greedy on that. But Vasilevsky's fantastic. Ben Bishop was great. Unfortunately, he couldn't bring him a cup in 2015, but Ben Bishop was fantastic. Dwayne Rollison, fantastic. Just like Ben Bishop, he was good, but just couldn't get over the hump. Tampa Bay's shot to win the cup was with Rollison was in 2011. And then, of course, Tampa Bay has already won the cup with Nikolai Happy-Bulin in 2004. The Maple Leafs, A tier. Yeah, I know they had Johnny Bower and a lot of really other good goalies. Felix Potvin, but again, it's just another team that's just lacked great goaltending for so long. Unlike Montreal, they at least have Carey Price, and they can sit on that for a long time. Toronto's just kind of had a revolving door. I mean, yeah, they had Reimer and Jonathan Bernier, who was kind of like flip-flopping. Ben Scrivens was a failed project. Frederick Anderson was good, but he didn't really lead you past the first round. And now you have Peter Mrazek, who is a borderline AHL goalie, and Jack Campbell, who's done well, made a couple of All-Star games, but he's just not great. I'll ruffle some feathers, but I'll put the Maple Leafs in A tier. Vancouver, B. Kirk McClellan was really good. Roberto Luongo was great. Pre-New Jersey Devil Corey Schneider, very good with the Canucks. I'd say probably B tier is fine with that. Vegas Golden Knights in their short history, I'll give them a B. Why not? Why not? I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury revived his career with the Knights. Robin Lehner revived his career with the Knights. Jack Thompson, I think, is the new goalie's name. I'm blanking on that rookie's name, who was, when Lehner was out for the rest of the year, he filled in those final 5 games of the regular season. And yeah, sure, Vegas missed the playoffs this year, but he just played absolutely phenomenal. And I think he's going to be a great goalie in the future. So give me the Knights B tier, whatever. Capitals, B tier again. I mean, yeah, you've had a lot of really solid goaltenders as well. Brendan Hope, Olaf Kolzig. I mean, your goalies now are a joke. Sleepsinoff and Vanachok. I mean, that's literally your current goalie's nicknames. But with that being said, Olaf Kolzig was great goalie in the early 2000s. And Brendan Hope, you want to know what, man? He climbed the mountain that all the other Capitals goalies couldn't, and he brought you to the Stanley Cup Finals, and he won you it. So, guess what? I got to give you B tier just for that. And then the Winnipeg Jets. C. Because Connor Hellebuyck is better than any goalie the Blue Jackets or Coyotes have ever had. So I can't really put the Jets in D tier, but I mean, really, before Hellebuyck, they had Andrei Pavlik. Before that, they had Kari Lehtinen on the Thrashers, and then Chris Mason. And Again, no goalie from the previous Jets era from the 80s really sticks out to me. So they're kind of stuck in seats here. Let me know what you guys think. These were the all-time NHL goaltending tier lists. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button. I'll see you guys in the next one.